When we think about great leadership, our minds usually jump to things like strategy, execution, hitting those targets. But what if the most powerful tool in a leader's arsenal isn't a spreadsheet, but a spark of inspiration? Today, we're going to dive into how creativity is becoming the secret ingredient for any truly successful, people-first organization. And this slide, it just nails the shift that's happening. On the left, you've got the traditional model. It's solid, right? It's about getting things done. But the creative leadership model over on the right, well, that adds a whole new dimension. It's not about ditching strategy, it's about supercharging it with inspiration. It's about going from just executing tasks to creating real, genuine engagement. And moving from simply getting results to driving true, lasting innovation.
But, okay, what's the actual payoff? Before we jump into the how, let's just talk about the why for a minute. Because this is the creative dividend, you know? These are the real tangible benefits you and your team get when you start leading with a more imaginative and open mind. So check this out. It really boils down to 4 pillars. First, it builds trust. When your team sees you as adaptable and open, they feel safe enough to share their own bold ideas. Second, it just skyrockets motivation. I mean, people are way more invested when they feel like they can actually shape the outcome, not just follow a script. Third, it drives innovation because it encourages new solutions instead of just, doing the same old thing. And finally, it builds resilience. The world is always changing, and a creative mindset is what helps a team pivot and adapt without falling apart.
And here's the bottom line. Creativity just makes leadership more human. It completely changes the vibe of a workplace. It takes it from being this routine, process-driven place to a space where people feel genuinely free to bring their full imagination to work and really contribute something meaningful.
All right, so that's the why. Let's get into the how. This next part is a super practical 6-step playbook. These are things any leader can literally start doing tomorrow to bring more of this creative energy into their daily routine. Which brings us to the big question, right? How do you actually unlock all this power and go from just understanding the idea to really living it with your team? Let's break it down.
Here is the toolkit. It all starts with asking those incredible what-if questions, just to break free from how we've always done it. Then, it's about encouraging people to experiment, because hey, real innovation never comes from playing it safe. We'll talk about using storytelling to turn a dry strategy into an exciting quest, blending perspectives to find ideas you never would have seen on your own, modeling curiosity, because if you aren't learning, why would anyone else? And finally, the importance of celebrating contributions to reward the process, not just the perfect result.
Let's just zoom in on step 3 for a second, because this is so important. You can present all the data and facts you want, but like this says, facts inform, but stories inspire. When a leader tells a story, they're not just sharing information, they're inviting their team to actually see themselves inside that vision. It gets both the head and the heart involved, and that's what makes ideas stick.
Now for step 2, encouraging experimentation. This is all about creating what they call psychological safety. When you give your team permission to try, and yeah, even permission to fail, what you're really giving them is permission to innovate. You're taking away that fear that kills creativity, and instead you're building the confidence your team needs to think bigger. And this ties right into another key idea from step 4. See, creativity is not a solo sport. The absolute best ideas come from mashing up different viewpoints. I mean, think about it. What happens if you bring an engineer into a marketing brainstorm? Their whole perspective on what's even possible could completely change what the team decides is worth talking about. When you actively go looking for those different voices, you're basically pouring fuel on your team's creative fire.
So, we've talked about the why and the how. Now it's time to actually put it all into practice. And listen, this doesn't mean you have to completely reinvent your leadership style overnight. It can start with just one simple, intentional step.
So I'll leave you with this final thought, and it brings us right back to the very first step in our playbook. Instead of asking for a simple yes or no, what if you sparked a whole new conversation? What's the one what-if question you're going to ask your team tomorrow to unlock their imagination and get this whole journey started?